How you doing, Rodrigo?
Hey, how are you, man?
Yeah, really good, thanks. No, I've enjoyed the show of what I've seen of it so far. I've got to be honest, I've only seen episode one. So needless to say, I'm still a little bit in the dark about your role and how he fits into this tale. So what can you tell me? Who is Garrett Briggs?
Actually, you will have to watch the rest of it. I invite you to really stick with it because you get a lot more than you got in the first episode. But Garrett is, is a park ranger. He's a father of two teenagers that have a very special condition. And as no, you haven't seen the second one yet. Okay, I don't want to give you spoilers, but let's say that he's a man that he's a man of strong values. That he's sort of like when you meet him, he's in the middle of a big crisis, a moral crisis, because he works as a park ranger serving a community, but at the same time, he needs to hold secrets inside his own house, the situation that he has with his kids. So he's in a dilemma when you meet him. Um, you saw in the first episode that he's trapped in a fire, and the introduction of the character is pretty much he's opening up about how he feels about his kids, which I really liked for the introduction of the character, because um, you just meet him, and then all of a sudden you're getting all this real human exposure in a very delicate situation. But
I
you will need to watch the rest of it. I don't want to spoil for you. You get much more about Garrett as second, third, fourth episode. The whole thing really starts to move.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the lack of spoilers. So I'm literally going to watch the second episode tonight. So,
Cool.
did you but like read the books? And just as an actor, as someone who I'm sure has been in many things that are based on pieces of literature, do you find they help as a reference point often books, or can they actually sometimes be a distraction?
Yeah, it depends. For this project, I did not. I looked at it actually. In fact, the writer, the author of the book, came to set, and he was very, very happy with on that day. With he talked about my character, how much he thought that we were able to translate the essence of the character that he created. Sometimes directors want you to, if the adaptation is, it's just, it's kind of like it's loosely based, or it's like very much like the book. In this case, it's based on it, but there are licenses that I think Jeff took to tell the story. But normally I do read, when it's based on a book. I really like to do that.
And of course, you work with Sarah Michelle Gellar on this. How was that experience for you? I mean, she's the queen of supernatural TV.
Yeah, man. It's the first time, it's my first adventure in a supernatural world. So it was great to have somebody like Sarah that has such in-depth experience in a supernatural, show. It was she was very helpful, and her perspective, on things. So it was great. It was great. She was, and also she has a great sense of humor. We had a very, very pleasant time, working together. Yeah, man, and I know she's an icon. We were yesterday was we're given interviews here, and then how people are, so excited that after quite a while, she's coming back and doing the show, and they ask her why this show, and it was so cool to hear, how she feels about this project.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, she's had a wonderful career, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer is obviously a show many know her for. What would you say? Is there a project or a role that you think defines your career best?
I don't think so. I would think it's sort of like choose your favorite child
Yeah.
if you have a lot of kids. Um, I don't know. Well, Love Actually. Love Actually, I'll point some projects were that kind of like defined sort of like the opportunities. because as far as experience and as far as what the project and was for me, it's hard to pick. But Love Actually was a tremendous hit, still is. It's probably the work that I get most recognized for because they play every year on TV, and it's a favorite for so many people. 300 was another one. Westworld, which was the last television series that I did. I think here in America, those three were, the works that they kind of like changed. They gave me more opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, you are really a real true actor of the world. I mean, you move seamlessly between different industries. I mean, have you ever had like a strategy? Do you ever think, right, okay, now I want to make a film in America, or I might go and make a film in Brazil, or do you just follow the best stories and just see where it
I,
takes you?
I honestly do. I did a film in Russian,
Mm.
so not in Russia, but I played a Russian literature professor in Cuba back then when Cuba and Russia were aligned. And it's a true story. And I had to speak Spanish with the Cuban accent, and half of the film I'm speaking Russian. And when the directors came to me and said, we really would like, and the directors are the kids of this guy who was this professor. It's a true story. They said, and I said, why you guys are looking? I mean, you're talking to me. Why didn't you get a Cuban actor that could speak Russian? And they said, well, it's our father. The story is about our father. We really think you're right for this part, and nobody we're going to find that speaks Spanish and Russian. So whatever actor will have to learn Russian. I'm just telling you this story because I thought this is ridiculous. I'm not going to be able to speak Russian as a professor. Uh, but I was so in love with the story, and I try to sabotage because I was ready to go on to sort of like my holidays, my vacation, and I'm like, no, 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 no. But after a week, it just stuck with me, and that's how I go. Honestly, it's called a translator, the film,
Mm.
and it was one of the best experiences that I've ever had. I learned Russian phonetically, of course. I don't speak a word, but it looks like I speak on the movie. Um, but the stories, yeah, the stories, the characters, the people that I'm going to work with, they all, guide me.
Yeah, nice. It's some incredible credits. But I was going to ask about in terms of going back to Wolfpack. I mean, when you sign up to a new series, do you have to consider that it could be something that lasts quite a while? Like it's a commitment that could be something that lasts a few years, perhaps, or do you just have to take every project if it's on TV, just series by series, and just sign up and treat it as a one-off, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. This is something that always come to mind when you're about to make a decision. They could go for a long time. The idea is that they go for a long time because that means that they're successful and that people, really like it. Uh, it scares me a little bit. When I signed up for Westworld, it was, I don't remember how many years, but it was like 4 years or something like that. And then you have the option. Um, it's a big chunk of your life. But I guess you got to go with your feeling, and if it goes for a long time, you stick with it. There's something really good about being part of a show that have several seasons because you have the chance to develop the character. It's a little different than working in a film. I mean, it's hard to compare because it's different language. It's a different way of telling a story. But when you have a show that goes several seasons, you have the chance to understand your character better and deepen, more and more and more. And, it has a longer journey. So I think in a way it's very rich for an actor.
Just very, very quickly, because I'm a huge football fan, so it'd be amiss for me to speak to Brazilian without having a quick word on the legend that was Pelé, especially as an actor who starred in his biopic. Just quickly, very before I go, what are your memories of Pelé? Maybe you might obviously too young to have seen him play, but I imagine he lives in the hearts of all Brazilians.
Oh, in the heart and in the soul, he is the biggest. Will always be, at least for me. Um, I was too young, but I remember growing up and watching the footage, and it was just born to do that. There was something very magical, especially at the time that he did it, and the grace. The grace. It was true art. He was an artist. It wasn't just talent. It wasn't just skill. It was something that it was sort of like meant to be, if you believe in those things. So yeah, it's a very dear figure for all of us, and I think all over the world. I saw when he passed, amazing repercussion all over the world. So yeah, but he'll be always there, as a reference.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time. Much appreciated, Rodrigo.
Thank you, Stefan. Have a good one.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey You Guys!